What's up, guys? It's Storm here, and today we're going to be talking about Monkey D. Garp and his strength right now in the story. I'm going to be clear from the beginning of this video, I'm not really going to be talking about Garp in his prime. This video is going to be more about Garp at his old age as we see him during the current story and how strong he is like right now. The last thing I'm going to mention before I really get into it is that if you're an anime only, I'm going to be talking about content that's like currently only in the manga as of the making of this video. So if you're worried about spoilers or whatever, you should leave. But you should probably go watch one of my other videos. I got a couple I really think you'd enjoy. The Gear 5 video I think is pretty good. Or the Kozuki Odin video, but whichever you want. Before I really start, I just want to say like and subscribe if you enjoy content like this, because I plan on making more. Upon Garp's proper introduction in the manga during the post-Enies lobby arc, he is referred to as the legendary marine who cornered Roger many times during his era, showing even at old age, Garp's reputation is still seen as legendary. He is later mentioned to be a vice admiral in his title card as well. As a side note, I want to talk about Garp and his relationship with the admiral position. Garp is often paired a lot with Son Goku in the story, such as both being referenced by Roger as being worthy adversaries, or them both fighting Shiki together. They are overall seen as being a similar level of power, despite at the time Son Goku being an admiral, so I doubt anyone thinks Garp lacks the real strength to be an admiral. Just for the sake of argument, I'll mention the reason why Garp isn't an admiral. Garp in Chapter 0 was shown directly rejecting a promotion to be an admiral. This is also said to not be the first time this has occurred. Taking into account his current rank and that the admiral position is the next that follows it in the marine rank system, this is pretty obviously an admiral promotion. It's later expanded that Garp doesn't want to be an admiral because he doesn't want to work directly under the celestial dragons, which would directly hurt his freedom as a result. So bottom line, Garp could have been an admiral whenever he wanted. One final thing to mention about his introduction in the post-Enies lobby arc is that Garp is actually quoted saying, "Haha, I hate getting old, they don't fly half as fast as they used to," in reference to him throwing cannonballs at the Straw Hat Pirates. This is one of the many statements in the manga where age is referenced to make someone weaker than they were at their prime, which for some reason is a debated topic within the fandom, despite the existence of characters saying things like this repeatedly in the story, and Lao G's whole combat style being designed around avoiding this weakening by old age. For those that actually want the raw translation of Garp's statement due to the viz being unreliable at times, it says this: "Bwahahaha, I don't want to get any older. Lately my power has been declining, and it's not good, you know." This also supporting that individuals get weaker with age in One Piece, so it really shouldn't be a discussion. Next, we could talk a little bit about Garp during the Sabaody Archipelago arc, where he hears suspicions of an old silver Israeli being sold at the slave auction. After hearing this, Garp then responds that if they approach Rayleigh the wrong way, they could lose a lot of men, despite him being old, which funnily enough even further supports the age weakening argument. Garp finalizes this statement saying, "Do you want the Navy to take on two legends at the same time?" This, in context, is foreshadowing to the eventual war of the best against Whitebeard, which means they're referring to both Whitebeard and Rayleigh as legends. Considering Garp was one of the rivals of Roger, it can easily be said that Garp is of the same legendary status, which could mean he has some sort of strength implication depending on your interpretation of the statement. This again will support Garp easily being on the Admiral level due to Rayleigh being able to combat Kizaru, as well as Whitebeard being able to fight on par with Akainu even while weakened by his sickness at his old age. Just to support Garp's legendary status, I'll bring this up. In a flashback during the Marineford War, we see Roger talking to Garp after he turned himself in, where he's talking about his relationship with Garp as a whole. In the Viz translation, it is said that Roger has been fighting Garp for years and he trusts him as much as any of his shipmates. But again, if you want to look at the raws, because the whole Viz unreliable thing, it says, "How many times have you and I fought each other to the death?" which supports them being on the same level as one another in their prime and Garp being on the same legendary status. In the same Marineford arc, we see Garp was actually able to outperform Marco. Marco's in his Phoenix form trying to save Ace from execution by flying to him, but Garp is able to intercept him so fast that Marco couldn't even react to him and is sent flying away. Marco's even seen with a bruise after, and if you watch my Marco vs Sanji video, you know that Marco can instantly regenerate from any wound. This scene actually implies that with enough haki you should be able to damage Marco and have him not regenerate immediately. This would make sense considering Rayleigh tells Luffy at the beginning of the 3D2Y that the only effective countermeasure against Devil Fruit users is the color of arms haki, which Garp did actually use on Marco. Just to back up what I just said, I'll show Garp's page in the One Piece Blue Deep data book. The caption under the image of Garp punching Marco reads, "His fists, clad in the high spirit of the color of arms, can bring down the hammer on even the great pirates of today. Though he may be old, the name Genkotsu is still known to this day." This is also mentioned in Garp's River Card Databook section, which reads, "The fist imbued in Bushoku Haki is like a shot put, capable of crushing even the strongest opponents in the New World with a single blow." Both of these actually confirm that Garp used Armored Haki on Marco in his interaction with him, so it makes sense as to why Marco didn't immediately heal it. Now, if you're curious about my interpretation of the actual statements made in these two statements I gave you, you can interpret them as flavorful text that exaggerate Garp's abilities, due to Garp not being able to defeat Marco in a single blow even in the interaction that they're quoting. Or if you want to take them more literally in the case of a Reviver card, it could be referencing Garp's fight with Qingjiao, where he actually did crush Qingjiao's prized strongest head in the world. But if you want to think old Garp can just like one-shot Kaido, Shanks, and Big Mom, you're free to think that. I'm just pointing out that I would probably disagree with you. Anyway, after Garp witnesses Akainu kill Ace, he angrily declares that if Sengoku releases him, he will kill Akainu, which is actually a pretty interesting statement. If you guys want, maybe one day I'll make a whole entire video about that topic and my personal thoughts about who won the matchup at that current time in the story. So right now, I'll just leave that thought up in the air. Comment if you want that video, and maybe I'll make it in the future. Garp and Sengoku are also called out near the end of the war by Blackbeard, who's confident that he can now defeat both of them using the new Guruguru no he just acquired. They actually do fight off screen, and it's shown in the anime with Sengoku being able to clash with this Guruguru Blackbeard. And considering that Sengoku and Garp should be relative, Garp, if you consider this anime scene canon, should be capable of something similar with its haki. After Marineford, Garp and Sengoku actually resign from their respective ranks, which is narrowly supposed to signify that their era is over, which is the same sentiment Whitebeard actually held during the war. Oda also shows this through Sengoku going through the most wild transformation in 2 years I've ever seen. His whole afro turns white, his beard turns white. It's actually really crazy. The reason I bring up this resignation is because it's a common thought in the One Piece power scaling community that the admirals are above Sengoku and Garp in terms of power due to that title inherently meaning that they are the greatest force in the Marines. But with a resignation of these two, it brings Fujitora and Green Bull's power in relation to Garp and Sengoku during their old age into question. There are a bunch of interpretations of the admirals against Garp and Sengoku, and I'll tell you mine by the end of this video, but I'm genuinely curious about yours, so comment your thoughts below. I'm keen on reading them. I want a better scope of the community thoughts as a whole, so it'd be really cool if you guys have a comment about what you think about Garp versus Green Bull, Sengoku, Fujitora, vice versa, or whatever. This is the point of the video where we're going to get into manga only territory, so if you don't want events as far in as chapter 1080, then you can leave now. After hearing that Kobe has been taken hostage by the Blackbeard pirates, Garp and a crew of sword members invade Pirate Island, with Garp entering the scene with one of, if not the greatest application of haki we've ever seen in the series. We have shown that Garp does indeed have Conqueror's haki as we all theorize, and is capable of infusing himself with it, making himself a part of the handful of the strongest within the story. Garp showcases this using his Galaxy Impact, which dwarfs all the buildings on the island, and also he again mentions him being weaker with his old age, saying, quote, "After all these years, I'm losing my edge." Kuzan, who's also a part of the Blackbeard Pirates at this point, reveals himself and challenges Garp before freezing him with Ice Ball, but Garp easily breaks out of it using his strength and his haki. The fodder surrounding them even say Kuzan's ice isn't working on Garp. Garp also has an interesting statement before completing his attack on Kuzan. He says, quote, "Don't be tied down by this nonsense. I taught you to live in the moment. Listen up, Kuzan. Wavering is a sign of weakness." Within One Piece as a story, mental nerfs are a concept that aren't talked about quite enough. It's a concept spoken about on a few occasions, and it's important for interpreting how certain fights may go. The first time it's mentioned to my knowledge is within the Skypiea arc. Gonfall is speaking about Enel and references how he rules with fear and manipulation. He brands all travelers as criminals and has citizens pass judgment, which makes them guilty since they know it's wrong. When a person cannot act without feeling guilt, he is at his weakest. Another example is Nami during the Water 7 arc. After they reveal that Robin supposedly betrayed the Straw Hats and is going with CP9, the crew is in a state of confusion and hesitation. But when Nami realizes that Robin didn't betray them, she's been cleared of the doubt and is confident that now the crew knows the truth, that their strength will be infinite. An important quote from Nami that is actually shown again is that hesitating makes us weak. We see this just by comparing Luffy's performance against Blueno and Lucci before knowing Robin's secret to after, where he's much stronger and fights more on par with them. The final statement I'll use is Rayleigh during the beginning of 3D2Y, which is when he tells Luffy that to never doubt is truly power, which reinforces this concept even more. There are a few examples of this in the story that I can bring up as well. When Odin fights Kaido, he hesitates due to him thinking the witch is Momo in danger, which weakens him to the point that a base Kaido off-guard attack can actually defeat him. Obviously the Straw Hats during Water 7, as I mentioned previously. Even Garp himself has fallen victim to this within the story. During Marineford, Garp has his moral dilemma about Ace's execution and whether which is more important, duty or family. When Garp tries to stop Luffy while under this dilemma, he hesitates, and Luffy's able to draw blood from Garp despite him being much weaker than him. Garp's statement says to us that Kuzan has not completed the moral dilemma he has had since he let Robin go on Ohara. His test on if the government's decisions are just as well as the morality of pirates hasn't completely leaned one way or the other yet. Even him fighting with his own master is difficult for him, just based on a morality standpoint. Which all comes together in Kuzan being held back by his own mental state during this fight. Okay, now with that context out of the way, Garp speeds over to Kuzan and performs Blue Hole, which throws Kuzan into a crevice on the island. Just as an interesting note, I want to mention something Sandman, a reliable translator on Twitter, has said about this manga page. He says that based on the Japanese writing, it could imply Garp threw Kuzan so hard into the ground that he could have fallen into the sea if not for his ability. We cut back to this a few chapters later to see Garp actually knock San Juan Wolf into the nearby ocean. He then reacts and blocks Vasco Shot's drunken Spitfire, using some fodder as a shield. The fodder even complained how Garp is standing against all of them without losing a single step, which could be interpreted as just the fodder or the fodder and the commanders of Blackbeard's crew. Either way, it's impressive considering fodder plus a powerful enemy is much more challenging than just that powerful enemy alone within the One Piece story. While trying to retreat after having saved Kobe, Shiryu attacks and Garp has to take an armament hockey sword staff from an invisible Shiryu in order to save an unsuspecting Kobe. After being stabbed, Garp then slams Shiryu using no hockey and is able to draw blood from him. He's even said to have been weakened from the stab wound after. The fodder try to attack him, only for Kuzan to claim that them attacking even a weakened Garp is a fruitless endeavor. Another interesting thing to note is that Garp was given the same bounty of 3 crowns, or 3 billion berries, that an active admiral would have by Cross Guild. Aokiji and Garp then exchange in a single punch each before they both fly away evenly with an explosion occurring afterwards. After they both get up, we see Kuzan's actually worried about Garp's stab wound, which supports the whole mental nerf argument more, as Garp even calls him soft. Garp then decides to truck Kuzan like he's a damn linebacker, and he speedily hops from building to building before hitting Avalo Pizarro's island head using his Galaxy Divide, which actually splits the island head in two. Garp ultimately was able to rescue his protege, but he does end up captured by the Blackbeard pirates, but he laughs anyway at his own success. So we've come to the point where I analyze my thoughts and tell you how strong Garp really is. Overall, Garp seems to have at least admiral level portrayal no matter what point of his career we're looking at. Even before the Great Pirate era, he was taking on people like Prime Chinjiao, who are stated to rival Roger in the Beaver Card Data book, and Chinjiao had had many fights with Garp before the final altercation. Also, like I said before, he fought Shiki with Sengoku, who was an admiral at the time. He was able to blitz and punch away Marco, who was said to be on even footings with the admirals during their time fighting on Marineford. He even has the same bounty issued as an admiral to him by Cross Guild. He's also among people like Rayleigh and Whitebeard, who can fight admirals at their old age as well. All this information together just tells me that Garp should at least be on the level of the admirals during Marineford. I mentioned comparing Garp to Fujitora and Greenbull before, so I'll just finish that point now. I personally am of the opinion that currently Garp should be above them. We are told during Marineford that the admiral position means you are the greatest fighting force of the Navy, and it's also referenced as including Fujitora and Greenbull within Fujitora's Beaver Card Databook section. Considering Garp is effectively resigned at that point, I think it's safe to say it shouldn't necessarily include him. Now with the original 3 Logia admirals, it gets a bit more tricky. Garp has always been offered the admiral position, so it may just be the case that he's on their level even while old, which is looking like the most likely case as of right now. Using the Kuzan fight, Garp looked more superior in like almost every regard, but we have to remember that Kuzan wasn't at his best due to him hesitating. But after Garp was stabbed and weakened, they still seemed like they were on the same tier of power, with them both getting like blown back away from each other after their clash. Garp also was able to outspeed Kuzan while he was getting to Avalo Pizarro, so it leads me in the direction that Garp is likely the stronger of these two, based on what we saw, even including Kuzan's hesitations and stuff like that. The real wild card of this discussion would be the eventual reveal of Logia Awakenings, which we know basically nothing about at this point. Maybe Punk Hazard could be some sort of example, but again, we don't know anything about it. We just know that they should make you exceptionally stronger. This part is all speculation, but I'll put my money on full power Awakening Kuzan being much more powerful than the Garp we saw him fighting a few chapters ago. But I don't think Kuzan should be leagues ahead of Garp even using the Awakening. So my thought process on this right now It's probably something like full power Awakening Kuzans at the top. Then we have Garp. Then we have like more of a base Kuzan not using his Awakening. But it is subject to change depending on like what information we get in the future. But I think this is probably the most consistent thing I can think of right now. But it really just depends on how strong Loki Awakenings are. So speaking in a more broad scope for where I would say Garp is strength-wise, he's around Kuzan's level at least, which would put him up with like the top tiers of the verse, you know, Admirals, Yonko, stuff like that. Kuzan even 2 years ago was on par with Akainu. He posed a serious threat to the Blackbeard pirates after the Marineford War, but this is before they became a Yonkaku officially. But it is implied that Akainu would be able to deal like devastating damage to Blackbeard's whole crew, which is a pretty good feat because this is Blackbeard with the Yami Yami no Mi and the Gura fruit. Also, this same Akainu was also able to fight like a top tier Whitebeard and clash with him evenly, and they were on even keel until eventually Whitebeard had his heart attack. So this Akainu is actually pretty impressive. He is still a top tier, and Garp should at least be just as strong as this, in my opinion. So even despite his age, Garp's still like one of the strongest characters in the story. It's actually kind of impressive that when we watch someone like really fight in the Sabaody Archipelago arc, he kind of seems to have a little bit of stamina problems. He gets like tired really quickly. But during this Egghead Island Garp stuff, we didn't really see Garp like get like fatigued or anything. He got kind of weakened before he really like started running out of steam. It also is shown that Garp keeps up his training, so that might also be a reason why Garp has better stamina than Rayleigh. But yeah, I think Garp should be able to fight on par with like any top tier we've seen so far in the story. That's probably where I would place him right now based on everything we've seen. So yeah, that's the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, I don't know if anything else I want to really say. Follow my Twitter, I guess. I post things, so yeah, follow my Twitter. See you guys next time.